Greetings and salutations, horror movie fans. My name is Gilbert Yabar, and welcome back to the Attic Review. On today's episode of TAR, I want to talk about arguably the best and most influential slasher/horror movie of all time, Halloween. 1978, John Carpenter etched his name into horror infamy forever with this classic and created one of the Rushmores of horror icons with Michael Myers. And I'm going to briefly explain why Halloween is the best slasher of all time. In traditional Attic Review fashion, I'm going to break the movie down into the three acts as I saw them play out, what I really loved about each act, and then at the end explain even more why Mikey and this movie are the GOATs. So without further ado, John Carpenter's Halloween. Damn, Carpenter hitting us with some erratic and eerie music as he shows us Halloween night 1963. And we see a weird little boy named Michael Myers, and he's watching his older sister being naughty with the boy. And as soon as that boy leaves, Mikey then enjoys two things. Number one is busting in on his sister as she's naked, and two, looking at his hand as he's stabbing his poor sister to death. For that little stunt, his crazy ass gets sent to the crazy house for 15 years, and Dr. Loomis is arriving Halloween Eve 1978 to demand that his ass stays locked up forever. Mikey with a wrench in his hand says, "Gotcha, bitch," to Nurse Marion, and steals the car like a pro who's been driving for years. And Mike is heading home to Haddonfield for Halloween. And there we meet teen Laurie, who loves her friends, loves babysitting, and loves her small town. All those things are getting fucked up tonight. So real quickly, Laurie is babysitting Tommy Doyle as her friends go off to fornicate, and Dr. Loomis is trying like crazy to warn Haddonfield about Prison Mike on his way. And Mike is just driving around town really enjoying himself and popping up randomly to say hi to Laurie, all while a killer musical score is playing. We end Act 1 with Laurie getting weird phone calls from Annie, and then her spotting Michael looking like a freak in between those sheets in her yard. Before we get to the great stuff about Act 1, do me a huge favor and click like and subscribe. It makes me feel so much better. Alrighty, thank you so much. On with the show. Act 1 like, this is actually a love. That opening is fire, with possibly the best theme in horror and that creepy jack-o'-lantern as we crawl towards the true beginning of the film. Immediately, the music. Carpenter is a genius and created that masterpiece from his father's teachings. Probably the most identifiable notes in all of horror. Well, besides Jaws. The brilliant use of POV-style filming for the introduction and the terror felt at the asylum breakout were huge signs that this movie is gonna scare us silly. The chilling musical score and POV shots of Michael stalking Haddonfield keeps us, the audience, at constant unease. Like, we're being watched, and that's how you know greatness in a movie. Some of my favorite scenes include the opening POV style of Mike doing work. Not the first to do it, but perfected here, even if he is looking at his hand while stabbing. Loomis and Marion approaching the asylum is amazing. The storm in the background as they discuss the evilness of Michael, haha. And then the patients scattered around as Michael escapes with that wrench in his hand. I'm sorry, it gets me every time, but wow, great first 11 minutes. And all of the little moments that Michael just pops up and then vanishes just to mess with Laurie's head. Nice mind games, Mikey. I don't know why, but my favorite scene might be when Annie is talking that shit to Michael as he's speeding past him, and he straight up pumps the brakes on that attitude she thought she was having real quick. Tons more that I could talk about, but let's see what Act 2 has to offer. As Laurie and Annie are driving to their babysitting gigs, they run into Annie's father, the town sheriff, at a broken into hardware store where someone stole a mask, some rope, and a couple of knives. And that same someone just so happens to be tailing Annie, and no one, not the sheriff, not Fresh into Town Loomis, not the gals, no one notices that stolen station wagon that is labeled following them. Haddonfield, this town is hereby condemned. As Michael sets up shop in the babysitting district of the neighborhood and goes to work stalking the shit out of everyone under the age of 18. Dr. Loomis and the sheriff are at Mikey's house in case he shows up, but Michael's got his eyes on Annie right now. And then his hands in a scary attack in her car, and Annie is the first, but not the last of her friends to go. Poor Tommy truly becomes a believer in the boogeyman when he sees Myers carrying Annie into the house, and we end Act 2 with Dr. Loomis scaring some bully-ass kids for fun, and the sheriff thinking that all this might be a hoax. Act 2 likes. Let's start with the incredible tension and eerie atmosphere created. The town going from dusk to darkness in 5 seconds set the mood instantly that some scary shit was gonna go down. And although there was only one kill during this act, the truly frightening stuff was the build-up leading to Annie's garage, as Myers masterfully hunted his prey, and we watched. The music and camera work added dimensions to this film that were groundbreaking, and Act 2 has a perfect groove of keeping us constantly ready to jump, and we still jump. Some of my favorite moments include the sheriff and Dr. Loomis briefly talking and Myers passing them by. Now, I always thought the part was hilarious, but someone mentioned that if you look closely, and this is true, you see Michael Myers looking left and right before he turns into traffic, therefore proving he's a killer, not a monster. Everything about Annie being stalked, not to sound like a psycho, is awesome, as we the audience are scared shitless as we see Michael around her, but she's oblivious to it. Like, for instance, him in the laundry room sneaking around and shit, and then the car in the garage scene is the perfect jump scare. Both times Tommy sees Michael lurking around with and without a body is a nightmare for any kid or an adult, because imagine seeing some shape out there just being a creeper in the middle of the night. And lastly, good old wild boy Loomis seeing Bully Lonnie at the Myers house and telling him to get his ass away from here. Damn it, his smile at the end. Incredible Act 2. No complaints except for that stolen labeled station wagon, but other than that, on to Act 3 and the finale of Halloween. We've got Linda and Bob all giggly after some hanky-panky and some booze. So Michael does Michael things by sticking Bob to a wall and then having Linda all choked up as she's talking to Laurie, which naturally worries the babysitter. Doing a welfare check on her friends, she sadly and shockingly finds her besties deadsies and takes a slash from this babysitter killer before she escapes out of the house. Well, the neighbors suck a lot for ignoring her pleas for help, and Tommy's little dumbass takes forever in letting Laurie in, but it don't matter because Mike is already in the house and haha! Surprise attack and gets her, but gets dropped. This gives her time to check on the kids, and it is time to enjoy the best last 10 minutes of horror ever. After being scared into a closet, Laurie drops Michael again with the hanger after an epic fight, and she emerges and tells the kids, hey, everything's all cool, head to the Mackenzies and call the Popo. Woo! Her guard is nice and down, as Michael performs the prettiest setup ever and resumes trying to murder her. But he nearly loses his mask and then gets capped 6 times by Loomis and falls out a window to his death. Yes! Ooh, psych out, because that fool is gone from the scene. And we end Act 3 and this masterpiece knowing that Michael is far from done with Laurie. Act 3 likes, you couldn't ask for a better finale in a horror movie, with its pulse-pounding music to make the chase scenes more horrific, and the reveal of Laurie's murdered friends before the big showdown was absolutely frightening. Atmosphere again is killer, as both houses in this quiet neighborhood are suddenly unnerving and sinister, all because Michael wants to act out on Halloween. Another like, I've already been gushing about the music, but Carpenter amps it up here and really electrifies these last 30 minutes. Also, Laurie comes out as the definitive final girl with the playbook to beat the bad guys. Some of my favorite scenes include what happened to Linda and what about Bob, respectively. Stuck to a wall and Linda being confused by Ghost Bob is gold. Laurie's stroll through Annie's house is something horror fans rejoice in. Seeing PJ Souls with the tombstone, Annie falling from the door frame, and then sneaky Myers showing up out of nowhere to send Laurie running. I love the air of panic and desperation as Laurie is seeking help from her neighbors, and I always crack up as they blatantly ignore her as she's on the brink of getting slashed up. What Halloween fan doesn't love the closet, the hanger, and the sit-up scene? It's what us fans look forward to the most. And Myers not being on the ground after Loomis pumped him full of lead is an ending that is easily one of the best and unsettling conclusions in horror. So, how did I feel about this movie overall? Okay, hold up. Before we get to the overall feelings, I was lying to myself. I thought I didn't have any Act 3 complaints. I do, and it's a big one, and I need to get it off my chest. And I love PJ Souls so much, but it felt like she was getting paid based off of how many times she can say totally. Every other word out of her mouth was totally, and I'm telling you, once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. I totally don't know who says totally more, PJ Souls or Mr. Ballin. I'm just kidding, I love you, Mr. Ballin, don't kick my ass. But now on to overall feelings. Let me say something that has already been said a million times. Halloween is the best slasher movie of all time. Rewatching it just further cemented this belief, as watching it for the 200th time, is still just as good as watching it for the very first time. The music, the shape, the final girl of the town, the camera being used differently to add a different air of suspense. This movie paved the way for all horror movies going forward, good or bad. Halloween, I could probably say, is the movie that made all of us fall in love with horror. And it wasn't just ultra violence or shock value. Halloween battered us with its audio, its imagery, the mystique and danger of the shape, and building that connection to good girl Laurie and fearing for her life like we would fear for our own. And that's how you capture an audience. So yeah, best horror movie ever? Great arguments in his favor, but best pure slasher ever made? Hands down, yes. And that's it for today's episode of Tar and my feelings as to why Halloween is the best slasher. And I hope you enjoy this John Carpenter gift to mankind as much as I do. It has been an absolute pleasure. Please like, comment, subscribe, tell some friends about the channel. My name is Gilbert Ybarra and thank you so much for watching the Addict Review. Smile, Tiger.